Hello and welcome back to our fretboard sessions. Today we're going to look at the secret police chord, the band, not the secret police chord like the Stasi or the Gestapo, Germany, just to make that clear. Alright, let's jump in. So what's the chord that I'm talking about? I am talking about this. Or this. So it's got a really distinctive sound. The Police used it a lot in those songs, and it comes up time and time again in music, and I think it's a great way to expand both your chord playing and soloing. So we can use this. We're going to find the theory, we're going to rip it out, and we're going to put it all over the fretboard and talk about how it lays out and some interesting things you can do. So what's the chord itself? Well, if we look at this first one here, it explains what all those chords are. What we've got there is an A chord. The second A has been moved up, and we've now got a B note in our A chord. So the notes we've got here are A, C sharp and E, and a B. So in this I've got a root, a third, a fifth, and a second. So what does that mean? Well, that's an Add9 chord, or Add2 you can think of. When we're adding on a 2, it becomes a 9. We call it a 9, but this is an Add9 chord. Now the reason this isn't a sus2 is because for it to be a sus2, we'd have to have no C sharp in there, or no third at all in this chord. But because it's got a root 3 and 5, it's got the normal triad, and then we've added something on from higher up, that's an Add9 chord. So this is A Add9, so that's the major version. And then the second chord that we hear in that song, that's an F sharp minor Add9. So we still have the full triad, but we've added in a 9 still. So we could do that with the A too. Okay, so it sounds pretty. It's much more interesting than just hearing this. So I think the best place is for you to try out the sound of that chord first of all. Either you can have a go at the A we just did, or over an E minor. So if we take that out, the idea that what we need to do is we need to have the normal triad, and then we're going to take an E note, or the root note, and replace it with a second somewhere. So in an E minor, that open E minor, I can take my E note that I've got here, move it up 2 frets, and instead of this, I've got this. Pretty sounding chord. Kind of sounds policey straight away. So, how are we going to use this over the fretboard? Well, let's take a little examination on what happens if we want to use this around the fretboard and actually put this in our playing rather than just kind of basically at the open chords. So anywhere that you know how to play a triad, or which could be a bar chord, or it could be something much smaller than that, you can use this idea of an Add9. So if I'm on strings 2, 3, 4, and I've got this triad here, and this is on 9, 9, 8 on strings 2, 3, 4. Now I've got a root note there in my E note, which is on fret 9 of string number 3. I can replace that with a 2, or a 2 in that chord, which would be up 2 frets from that root note to get my F sharp. Now at this point I've got no root that's being heard. Now that might be okay or it might not be okay. Why might it be okay? Well, the important thing to remember here is that when we're actually naming a chord, it's not just about what you're playing on the guitar, it's about the whole kind of spectrum that's happening across the whole band. So if you've got a keyboard player, if you've got the bass player, if you've got a singer, the chord is actually whatever I'm hearing from those three. So especially in the guitar's case, the bass player often is playing a root note. So we don't need to always play the root note in everything we're doing for it to have the sound of that chord. But in this case, I've done it in E because we can actually hit the 6th string and we can make that sound without needing a bass player. But if you wanted to do it on your computer or you had a loop pedal, you could totally play in the bass part or the low part on your guitar or on a bass guitar. And the same would be true if I did that with an E major chord here. So E major, take the E note up 2 frets. So anywhere that you know your triad on the guitar, you can do that same thing with. So we could do it with a bar chord up here. On your bar chord, there's a root note here that's less important, or it's doubled. So if I can squeeze my pinky up there, I can play this Add9 bar chord. Or if I don't want to do it with that way of playing a bar chord, and you prefer to try and have a go at this way of playing that kind of chord, you could put your thumb over the top, or you could ignore that altogether and play these 4 here, and then your pinky, as long as it can go on this root here, that's my pinky going on and off. And you get this really kind of happy, funky vibe from chords. That's the major version. The minor version would be the same thing. I just have to have that finger on 3 notes now. Major. Now each of these chords are very movable, especially this one. So I could play that on D, E, so how would you use this in what you're doing already at the moment? Because I think it's one thing for me to talk about this grand idea, but how can you actually take this and use it in things you're doing already and get it as part of your practice? Well, I'd say wherever you're working on a song that has long chords, it's nice to have something you can do to make those long chords actually sound nice. So for instance, sometimes you can be playing a song, or you can look at a song that, looking at it on the paper, it looks like it's going to be boring to play on the guitar. So you might have 2 bars of D followed by an A and then a G. So on the surface it sounds nice, but you might not think it's that interesting to write guitar parts around. But something like an Add9 can immediately make things like that more fun, because you can move to and from the Add9 while that chord's in place. So let me give you an example here. So D with Add9, A, Add9, G, Add9. Cool. So you can use the chord idea in lots of songs very, very easily. Now, you can also use this same idea in melodies. So when you get a chord that sounds good, you think it sounds good, you can take that same idea and use it in your solo playing too, when you start thinking about how it works on the fretboard. So if you're able to play an arpeggio as a chord, then hopefully you can also play arpeggios as single note lines too. So if I take an A major arpeggio, for instance, over 2 strings. Okay. Now at this point, if you haven't seen my video on how to play diagonal arpeggios, it's a really easy way for you to play arpeggios all over the guitar. So it's going to help with this next section. I'll put a link here just in case you haven't seen it. So how can we now use our idea of arpeggios and this Add9 chord idea that we've stolen from the Police? And it's as simple as taking a minor or a major arpeggio and adding in that note when you're playing it. And we end up with these melodic lines that instantly sound like phrases rather than just arpeggios that go up and down. So I'll give you an example here. So that's just the arpeggio on its own, a major arpeggio. If I add in a 2 on my way between the root and the third, it sounds like this. And that's it over 3 octaves. And we can do the same with the minor. So if I do a minor arpeggio, you get these nice long melodic lines. And because it's got that Add9 in, it has a very similar feel. Cool. So I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. I hope you have a go at trying to use Add9 in your chords and on your fretboard and trying to dissect how it looks on the fretboard and also how it sounds for your ear so you can start using this in your playing more. I'll see you next time. I do videos every Thursday and Saturday. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'm trying to hit the 1,000 subscriber mark at the moment. So I hope you'll join us and I'll see you next time.